These keys belong to you. You are the owner of this mansion.
I... I don't understand.
Mia pressed both hands over the paper stars she had made in school so the rain would not ruin the glitter. It still curled at the corners. Glue had dried white along one edge, and one of the points had bent on the bus ride downtown, but she held it as carefully as if it were glass. She stood beside her mother on the courthouse steps, boots dark with water, red scarf slipping from one shoulder, and tipped her face up through the drizzle. "Do judges like Christmas stars?" she whispered. Her mother looked down, and for a moment the answer seemed to get lost somewhere between exhaustion and a smile she had not worn in a long time. "I don't know," Elena said, "but I think kind people do." Mia nodded as if that settled everything. Then she pressed closer to Elena's coat when the courthouse doors opened and a gust of cold air rolled out, carrying wet wool, old paper, and the low hum of voices that had already begun rising inside. Court was already in session by the time they were called in. The room felt warmer than the street and yet less forgiving. It had that stillness public rooms carry when people come to watch something private break apart. On the benches sat members of the Whitmore family in expensive dark coats, their grief arranged neatly, their pride even neater. At the front, beneath the seal of the state, a judge with silver-framed glasses was turning pages in a file thick enough to suggest that the truth had taken years to reach paper. Elena kept her chin level as she walked to the witness table. She knew what they saw when she passed. The woman who had lived in the West Wing and used the service stairs. The woman who had ironed table linens when the caterers failed to arrive one Christmas and had polished antique banisters before a fundraising gala because the regular staff had gone home sick. The woman old Mrs. Whitmore had introduced once, with absent-minded cruelty, as the help who never leaves. No one in the courtroom could smell furniture wax or starch on Elena now. Only rain and lavender soap and the faint trace of the coffee she had swallowed too quickly that morning. Still, old names have a way of clinging. Across the aisle, Daniel Whitmore stood with one hand braced on the edge of his table, listening while the family attorney summarized the petition in a voice so polished it almost glimmered. Contesting transfer of title, questioning validity of final amendment, challenging occupancy rights, protecting family legacy. He sounded like a man laying out crystal on white linen. No noise, no fingerprints. Mia leaned toward Elena and whispered too loudly, "Why is that man talking like he swallowed a radio?" A few heads turned. Elena almost hushed her, then saw the corner of the judge's mouth shift. "Inside voice," Elena murmured. "I did use my inside voice. You did your brave voice." That made Mia straighten with pride. Daniel, who had once laughed at the exact same tone from a much younger Elena in a church courtyard years ago, lowered his eyes to the table as if something in the grain of the wood had become suddenly difficult to bear. The judge adjusted her glasses. "Miss Rivera," she said, "you understand that this hearing concerns the legal ownership of the Whitmore residence and the challenge brought by the decedent's heirs." "Yes, Your Honor. And you understand that if the amendment stands, title remains with you." A murmur fluttered across the benches before being swallowed by a bailiff's glance. Elena heard it and kept both hands folded in her lap. She had learned long ago that stillness unsettled cruel people more than anger ever could. The Whitmore mansion had stood on the hill above Briar Lake for almost a century, all stone and ivy and narrow windows that glowed amber at dusk. It had hosted Christmas concerts, charity auctions, school luncheons, and one wedding that ended in quiet scandal by spring. People in town spoke of it the way they spoke of the church bell tower or the old park fountain, as if it belonged partly to memory and partly to weather. No one had imagined it could end up in the hands of the woman who used to carry trays through its back corridors. No one except Margaret Whitmore. Her final amendment had been signed 12 days before her death, witnessed by her physician, her pastor, and the attorney who sat now with calm hands folded over his yellow legal pad. "A woman can rewrite her understanding of family near the end," he had said in preliminary motions. "She can also rewrite her will, But blood relatives do not surrender an estate worth millions because paper says they should. They come armed with stories, with indignation, with old photographs arranged to imply what they cannot prove. The first witness was Gregory Whitmore, Daniel's older brother, who smelled faintly of cedar cologne and impatience. He described Elena as an employee, then as a companion to their mother, then, under questioning, as someone who had inserted herself into the family after Margaret's health declined. Inserted herself, the judge repeated. How exactly does a person do that into a household where she is already residing? Gregory blinked. My point is that she gained influence by cooking, cleaning, managing medication schedules, and transporting your mother to church and medical appointments. According to your own affidavit, he shifted. That was not her role initially. No, Elena's attorney said softly, rising. Initially, her role was to be humiliated at dinner when guests were present, to be mistaken for staff when she corrected the wine order, and to be left out of photographs despite living under that roof for 7 years. Objection. Overruled. The attorney stepped closer. Mr. Whitmore, how often did you visit your mother during the year before she died? Gregory's jaw tightened. I traveled for business. That was not my question. The rain grew stronger against the tall courthouse windows, a silver tapping that seemed to underline every pause. Elena watched the drops race one another down the glass and thought, briefly, of another rainy day years earlier, when she had first arrived at the mansion with one small suitcase and nowhere left to go. She had not come seeking rescue. She had come because Margaret Whitmore had found her sitting on a church bench after evening service, holding a paper envelope that contained a hospital discharge form, 2 blood test results, and the last cash she possessed. Elena had been 24, newly pregnant, too proud to call the father, and too stunned by betrayal to know what to do next. Margaret had sat down beside her in a cream coat and asked the kind of question rich people rarely ask without performing generosity. Who is with you? No one, Elena had answered. Margaret had looked at the rain gathering on the church railings. Then come out of it before you catch cold. That was all. No promise. No tenderness in the usual sense. Just a practical command, as if shelter were an ordinary thing she expected to be obeyed. Daniel had been in the mansion that night, home for the Christmas fundraiser, arguing with his brother over a land sale. Elena remembered the sharp line of his shoulders near the study fireplace, the sound of his voice going quiet when he saw her. They had known each other before the Whitmores ever knew her name. Once, there had been coffee in paper cups, long walks after choir practice, and the kind of laughter that happens before adults learn how expensive love can become. Then his father had offered Daniel a choice wrapped in family language and business necessity. Marry the woman whose family would merge properties and fix debts, or watch the foundation collapse and take half the town's jobs with it. Daniel had not said yes right away. That had been the cruel part. Elena had believed hesitation was devotion. She had mistaken his torment for courage. By the time he came to see her, it was raining. He was still wearing his engagement dinner suit. She remembered that detail because one cuff had a smudge of ash on it, and she had thought, absurdly, that the world might still be saved if she brushed it clean. I didn't know how to stop it, he had said. She had opened the door wider, then not wider at all. You knew where I lived, Elena. No, she had not told him about the child. Not then. Maybe some wounded part of her wanted him to feel the shape of his choice without having another life to blame it on. Maybe she simply wanted one thing in the world to belong to her before the Whitmores laid claim to it. Now, years later, he sat in a courtroom and listened to strangers use her life as evidence. By noon, the hearing broke for recess. People stood, stretched, whispered into phones, and gathered in little weather systems of speculation. Elena took Mia to a narrow hallway near the vending machines where the fluorescent lights hummed and the coffee tasted burned. Mia placed the damp paper star on a chair and frowned at it. It looks tired. It's had a long morning. Like you. Elena smiled into her cup. Like me. Mia swung her legs from the bench. If the judge says yes, do we still live in the house with the big stairs? Or now? And if she says no, Elena looked at the star, at the glitter stuck to the vinyl seat, at the small fingers already reaching to collect the fallen pieces. Then we find another home. Mia considered that with the gravity children reserved for things adults can barely survive. Can we still take the wooden angel from the upstairs hall? That nearly undid her. Margaret's wooden angel stood on a table outside the chapel room every December. One wing chipped, face worn smooth from time and polishing cloths. Margaret used to say beauty was often just what survived handling. Maybe, Elena whispered. A man's voice came from behind her. Your daughter likes the angel too? Daniel. Close enough for her to hear the strain in him, the sleep he had missed, the sentences he had rehearsed and abandoned. Elena did not turn immediately. She folded the lid onto her coffee, though it was already closed. She likes a great many things, Elena said. Mia looked from one adult to the other. Do I know you? Daniel's face changed. It happened so quickly. Elena almost wished she had not seen it. Hope, confusion, then something raw, older. Mia had his eyes when she looked straight at someone. Not the color. The way they listened. I used to know your mother, he said. That wasn't the question, Mia replied. Elena closed her eyes for half a second. Daniel almost laughed. It came out broken. I'm Daniel. I'm Mia. She pointed to the paper star. I made that for the judge, but now it looks like a potato. It looks brave to me. Mia accepted this and returned to picking glitter off her tights. Children are merciful that way, and sometimes they notice only the sound afterward. Daniel looked at Elena. We need to talk. No, you need to talk. Elena, you had 7 years. His hand tightened around a folder he was carrying. I didn't know. Her eyes went to the folder. Blue cardstock, bent corner. Margaret's old habit had been to label everything in blue. Medical records, parish donation lists, school forms. Elena knew before he opened it that whatever lay inside had already altered the day. He drew out a child's drawing. A house with too many windows. A woman in a green dress. A little girl under purple rain. And a man standing at the gate. Stick arms, serious eyes. On the back, in Margaret's trembling handwriting, were 4 words. He should have been told. Elena felt the hallway tilt slightly, then steady. Where did you find that? In my mother's desk, hidden under the hymnals. She had no right. She had every right to tell me I was a coward. His voice dropped. Was Mia already born when you moved into that house? Mia looked up. Why do you sound like you're in trouble? Neither answered. The second half of the hearing began with a witness no one on the Whitmore side had expected Elena's attorney to call so early. Mrs. Beatrice Nolan, age 68, retired school secretary, lifelong parish volunteer, and owner of a memory sharp enough to make younger people nervous. She took the oath, set her purse neatly at her feet, and looked straight at the judge. I know why Margaret changed the will, she said. The Whitmore attorney rose halfway from his seat. Your Honor, you may cross-examine when it is your turn, the judge said. Mrs. Nolan folded her hands. 3 years ago, at St. Bartholomew's Christmas concert, Margaret overheard her sons discussing which wing of the mansion to convert into a boutique event space after her death. She was still alive and standing not 6 feet away. They were arguing over where to place a champagne bar. A ripple of discomfort moved through the courtroom. She said nothing then. Mrs. Nolan continued. That was her style. But later, in the church kitchen, she watched Elena untangle coats from the children's rack while holding a sleeping child against her shoulder. And Margaret said to me, there is only one person in that house who treats it like a home instead of a trophy. Gregory stared ahead. Daniel did not move at all. Then came Father Thomas, stooped now, voice thinner than it used to be, but steady where it mattered. He testified that Margaret had discussed not charity, but correction. She believed she had participated in a great moral failure, he said, looking toward Elena. Not once. Repeatedly. The attorney asked, "Did she specify what failure?" Father Thomas took a breath. She said that years ago she had used shelter as a leash. She gave Elena a room, but allowed her to remain diminished under her roof. She called it generosity while enjoying obedience. The courtroom went very quiet. And near the end, she said she could not give back youth. She could not give back dignity already bruised. But she could put a key in the right hand. When the lunch recess ended, snow had begun to mix with rain outside, thin and indecisive. Through the high windows, the sky looked like wool pulled apart. The judge called for a final set of documents to be marked into evidence. Elena recognized the envelope before it was opened. Ivory, hospital logo, sealed edges that had once made her stomach tighten every time she saw them in a drawer. The Whitmore attorney objected immediately. Relevance? Elena's attorney spoke with almost painful calm. Motive, your honor, and family relationship. Daniel's head turned slowly toward Elena. Not a dramatic motion. Worse, the kind a person makes when some private fear has finally found its name. The judge studied the filing. This court will review the contents in chambers unless counsel stipulates. No, Gregory said too quickly. No stipulation. But Daniel was already on his feet. Your honor. His voice sounded unlike the polished air everyone knew. It sounded scraped clean. If this is what I think it is, there will be no objection from me. Gregory hissed, sit down. Daniel did not look at him. There will be no objection. The judge looked from one brother to the other, then to Elena. She opened the envelope, read in silence for several seconds, and the room seemed to hold its breath with her. When she finally spoke, her tone did not change, but the air did. For the record, this document contains a paternity test naming Mr. Daniel Whitmore as the biological father of minor child Amelia Rivera. No one moved. The silence that followed was not empty. It was crowded with every small thing that had led there. A bus ticket, a church bench, a wooden angel with one chipped wing, a child's drawing hidden under hymnals, a man at a door too late, a woman deciding that survival sometimes requires secrecy. Mia swung her feet beneath the bench and whispered, not understanding why the adults had all turned strained. Amelia is me. The judge's gaze softened briefly. Yes, she said, then returned to the lawyers. I suggest counsel proceed with intelligence. Gregory stood to protest, stumbled into a complaint about manipulation, inheritance strategy, and entrapment, so ugly even his own attorney tugged at his sleeve. Daniel remained standing, one hand pressed to his mouth. Elena did not look at him. If she did, she knew she might remember the boy he had been instead of the man who had failed her. By late afternoon, the hearing had changed shape entirely. What had begun as a challenge over property now exposed a family that had mistaken status for morality so often they no longer knew the difference. Margaret's amendment included not only transfer of the mansion to Elena, but the establishment of a trust for Mia's education. Funded from a separate account no one had known she had moved out of the family business years before. Attached was a handwritten letter the court allowed into the record over weak objections. Elena listened as her attorney read it aloud. If this reaches daylight, Margaret had written in a hand more fragile than Elena remembered. Then I have run out of time to apologize in person. Houses do not belong to blood if blood only arrives for silver and portraits. A home belongs to the one who keeps illness company at 3 in the morning, who notices when the medicine glass is chipped, who opens curtains before visitors come so the room does not smell of endings. I leave Briar House to Elena Rivera not because I pitied her, but because I misjudged her strength and benefited from it. If my son Daniel has learned anything worth keeping, let him begin there. If he has not, then let him stay away until he can arrive without entitlement. As for Amelia, tell her the angel was always meant for her. There were people crying by then who had no connection to the Whitmores beyond curiosity and a free afternoon in court. Public feeling shifts quickly when the rich are shown to have loved an estate more carefully than they loved a child. When court adjourned for the day, the judge announced that a ruling would be delivered the next morning after review of all exhibits and final written responses. The room emptied in fragments. Reporters waited near the front steps beneath umbrellas. Attorneys vanished into calls. Gregory left through a side exit with his jaw set like stone. Elena took Mia by the hand and avoided the main doors. They crossed to the small park beside the courthouse, where iron benches glistened with meltwater and the pond had skinned over with a weak gray film. Christmas lights had been strung between the bare trees by the town council, and in the wet dusk, they trembled like uncertain stars. Mia climbed onto a bench and spread both arms. So that man is my father. Elena stood very still. You heard more than I wanted you to. I hear everything. Mia tilted her head. Is that why he looked like he forgot how to stand? Elena almost laughed. It turned into a breath instead. Yes. Did you not tell him because he was mean? No. Because he was married? That one landed harder. For a while, yes. Are you still angry? Children ask questions the way winter opens windows. Clean and cold. I was angry for a very long time. Are you now? Elena watched the courthouse lights glow on across the street. Now I'm tired. A few minutes later, Daniel came into the park alone, coat unbuttoned, hair damp with sleep. He stopped several feet away, as if some part of him knew that proximity had to be earned from the ground up. I asked your attorney where you went, he said. She nearly bit my head off. She's very gifted. Mia looked between them with bright, unapologetic interest. You can come closer. I don't bite unless it's really serious. Daniel did laugh then, and the sound was so familiar Elena had to grip the back of the bench. He took one cautious step, then another. I don't have a right to ask for anything today, he said. I know that. Good.